So I wanted to share with you about the Casket Empty story because often when I'm in churches or speaking at retreats, people will say, well, how did Casket Empty come about? And so I wanted to share some of that with you just to really give testimony for all that God has done. So I was back in Australia and I was studying at the Melbourne School of Theology, and I was studying the Bible, loved the Old Testament, and a faculty member who is a graduate from Gordon Conwell, Rick Watts, was really very inspirational for me and really helped me to see the Bible as one narrative. Well, I ended up, while I was back in Australia, I was so excited about this. I remember one of the studies that I did, and I was teaching for youth at Youth for Christ, and it was in 1992, and I did a study, and it was on the covenant, curse, cross, Christ, and call. And what I did in this study was reminding me everything starts with C, but I also had a series of pictures that I used for this study, and even one of the pictures about the new covenant has a heart with the law in it, which is exactly what's on the timeline. And so God was using that, and I wanted to do pictures to help with the theology. Well, so then I came to Gordon Conwell in 1993 to 1996, and I studied and loved the scriptures. I ended up going on to do doctoral work at Cambridge University under Robert Gordon. I did work in Genesis 1 to 11. And when I was there, I was asked by this kind of church a little bit further out of Cambridge whether I would come and teach the Old Testament one night a week over several weeks. And I was excited to do this. And so I was thinking at the time, well, how do I communicate and how do I break up the Old Testament according to time periods? And I really felt that this was at the time when the Lord gave me the Casket Empty. It was from Him, and to really break up the Old Testament into these blocks. And I did basically one block per night on the Casket acronym. And there was a lady that came up to me at that study who really benefited from it. And she said, when you end up doing all your academic work, she said, don't forget about people like us in the church. And I do remember that. It stood out to me. And so when I started then teaching, in 1999, I moved back into the US. I got married to my husband, Matt, who is a graduate from Gordon Conwell. And then I was teaching a class in Boston at the seminary. And I was teaching this class, and I wanted to teach it in a way that was visual. And so I ended up drawing up these large charts, and I kind of had them on cardboard, and I drew out the storyline. Well, I ended up teaching then another class, and more students came, and it was a larger class. I thought, no one can see this cardboard thing. And so I ended up getting these large kind of charts I got from Staples, and then I typed up all the information. And I also wanted to have visuals with it. So I went to AC Moore and I got things like two trees. I got the serpent, I got a little book, I got cows, and I sprayed them gold. And then I put them on as Velcro onto this. And then I had the big signs up the top that had creation, Abraham, Sinai, Kings, Exile, Temple. And I remember when I was doing this, my husband said to me, you're teaching graduate students. Is this really what you want to do? And I said, no, I've always wanted to teach it like this. And so that was really the beginning of that project. Well, then people were asking me, is there a way that we can get some of this material? So then I came up with this laminate that was just a 2-page laminate. And this was only just giving creation, Abraham, Sinai, Kings, Exile. It gave all the key events, and it had some of the further information on the back of it. So I started using that, and people found that helpful, and a couple of people from other places and a couple of churches asked for it. And so then I was like, well, I need to do something more visual. So then I started with, this was the front cover, and it was just on a PowerPoint, and I got someone to do the pictures and then move forward with the creation, Abraham, Sinai, then the kings. So I did it that way, and then the last one of the kings as well, and then exile, temple. And so then people started ordering those and asking if they could get them. And so that was all happening. And then the other thing that was happening was when I was doing work on this, people were asking me, do you have anything written on this? So I started off with my first study guide, simply printing it up, having it spiral bound that I used for class. And then we got another reader that was used, so it was a little bit thicker. It got more information in there. And while all that was happening, a student had actually come to me and said, this was Kevin Merritt, his brother Chuck Merritt from White Post Media. He said, look, my brother might be able to help you get this in a better visual format. And so this started then this was wonderful. They did a wonderful job with it. This was the first start, although we have now changed the casket to be a little bit more positive, which then moved to this. And so that was all very exciting. So all this was happening. We had the timeline was getting produced. We had the spiral bound study guide. But I was also thinking about who would I have to work on the New Testament. And I'd considered a couple of people, been praying about it. And then in 2008, I was at the Society of Biblical Literature conference, and I was talking with a good friend of mine, Jay Sklar. And I said to Jay, I'm not quite sure. I've still been praying about who I get to work with Casket Empty. And he said to me, I would recommend David Palmer. Now, David Palmer was a friend of mine with his wife, Christine, because we had been at Gordon Conwell together. In fact, we were in the first Hebrew class together. And so I knew him well. And as soon as he said that, there was just something there that made me pause, and I began to pray about it. And so I wrote an email. It was actually in 2008, and I sent this long email to David, and I said to him, the short of it is, Jay has been very much part of this journey, and I shared with him at SBL about who I should get, and Jay said the person I would be looking for would be David Palmer. And I wrote in 2008, as soon as he said your name, it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I began to ponder it. And the more I've thought about it, the more I've thought I should contact you. So this is the email. And I shared with him about the project and about my desire to not only have this material as a resource for in the US, but also for the global church. And I said, my dream is that it might be used in other countries like Africa or China or Korea, or other countries around the world. And that was my dream, because I've always had a heart for mission. When I went to Bible college originally in Australia, I did a diploma of missiology, and I thought I would do mission work over in the Philippines, and God had a different plan for my life. So I've always had a heart for mission. So I sent this email to David, and David also had been teaching a Bible study in his church, and he had written for the Archaeological Study Bible, and God had been stirring his own heart. And he says, Dear Carol, I did not make it until the end of your email before I wept, because God had been at work in his life, and he was stirring him and asking him to say, what have you got next, God? And in fact, this then began this wonderful partnership of really teaching the scriptures in the church. And David also, even in this email, says about his heart for the nations. So it's just been an incredible journey. And I just want to share with you what God has done over the years. So not only have we produced the material in English, we've got the timelines and we've got maps and the study guide and the Bible studies. But over the years, God has just opened up opportunities for us to be a blessing to the global church. And we have timelines written in Arabic and in Farsi, just incredible, by the Persian Bible Institute and by Call of Love Ministries. We have a recent project where the timelines were translated into Thai, both the Old and the New Testament, including the study guide in Thai, Old Testament and the New Testament. And as you know, that there are less than 1% Christians in Thailand, so we've been able to bless the Thai church. Any resources from this are going back to minister in the Thai church. We don't receive anything. We've been able to gift it to them. It's also been translated in another dialect, Allahu, and they're just doing the Old Testament at this time. We even have it translated into Chinese, and this has by Campus Evangelical Fellowship Press. This is the timeline in Chinese in both the Old and the New Testament. great blessing to see that with the EMPTY acronym. We have the timelines, Bible studies, maps, study guides into Korean as well. So this has both the study guide and it has the timelines in both the Old and New Testament, and people have been teaching it around the world. We're also beginning a Spanish project. We've got the timeline done, the study guide's almost finished. There is a group that translated into Japanese. So I could not have imagined what God would do over all these years. And I thank you also for your support, for your encouragement. We get wonderful emails from people telling us about how encouraged they have been through this project. And really, over the years, our desire is to help people to understand the scriptures. It's just as simple as that. Because I believe, and David believes, that the scriptures and the Lord who reveals himself is wonderful. And we want to make him known so that people feel that they can understand who he is, they can see his character, and that they can love him and worship him and obey him. So thank you so much for all your support. And I wanted to share this with you really as a testimony of all that God has done. And so praise be to God.